I was at home for 3 days for a stay-at-home vacation from work. I live in a very rural area about an hour from the city. Honestly, I hadn't really taken these days off for any particular reason. I guess I was just feeling like I needed break. It was on my first day off as I stayed at home and watched TV among doing some other small things around the house around dinner time, though a knock came from the front door. I sat up from the couch and looked at the clock, seeing it was 7:00 p.m. It was strange for anyone to be at my house in general, but given the time as well, it was even more. So I walked up to the door and cracked open. A man was on the doorstep smiling at me. He looked like any other guy, no special features or anything. "What do you need?" I asked, looking around behind him and noticing no car or truck in my driveway. The man maintained his smile as he went through a whole scenario he was in. Just a few minutes ago, he said he was on the road that connected to my driveway when someone slammed into his car and drove off, leaving him stranded and having to come to me for help. The way he described it, and just from looking at him, things didn't seem to add up. My driveway was far from the road, and the chances he got into an accident right by the entrance was almost zero on such an empty road. I told him I call the police for him if he'd like, but the man declined. He said he wanted to borrow my phone to call his wife. It took me a few seconds to respond, because being unsure about the situation made me nervous to say no to him. I said I would call the police, and that was it. But the man's smile went away as he said, "Don't worry about it," and walked away from the porch. I closed the door, then looked out the window as the man walked down the driveway and disappeared in the dark. After a moment, I called the police just to be safe. About 20 minutes later, though, I got a call back from them saying there were no signs of any crashes on the road. I stayed up late that night looking out the windows and just being overall a little bit uneasy, but once it got to around 12, I was too tired to stay up. I went upstairs to my bedroom and got ready, then got in bed and fell fast asleep. I remember waking up frantically, but not understanding why, like maybe I'd heard something in my sleep but didn't wake up fast enough to comprehend it. Looking over, it was about 3 a.m. Got up from my bed and walked over to the door so I could listen for any sounds in the rest of the house. It was mostly quiet, but I could hear a slight rustling sound from somewhere outside. I carefully walked down the stairs to check on it, thinking it was probably just a bush brushing against the house. But as I got to the downstairs hallway, I realized the sound was moving. It was going along the edge of the house and toward the front. I felt my heart start racing as I tried to reassure myself everything was okay, but then the rustling stopped, and only a moment later there was a knock at the door. I stood still at the end of the hallway and stared at the front door, terrified of whoever was out there. After a few seconds, I moved away and up to a small window on the side of the house that had a view of the porch. Through the blinds, I could see two men, both in dark clothing and both holding something in their hands. It looked like tools or weapons of some kind. My eyes widened in fear as I backed away and quietly walked back up to my room. More knocking echoed through the house as I called the police and locked myself in. As I stayed on the phone, the knocks turned into banging thuds. I immediately knew it was what I feared. They were trying to break the door down. Hit after hit nonstop for over 5 minutes. They banged on the door, shaking the whole house. Then the operator on the phone finally said an officer was pulling up to my house, and at that same time all the bangings stopped. When the cop pulled up, though, he said he didn't see any men at my door. They must have run off just before he could see them. The door, however, was barely hanging on. The wood was bent and splintered, with only the bolt lock still in place. I was lucky that the police were able to show up quick enough, but I guess I was also smart to have not helped that one man. I'm assuming if I had, I would have only accelerated their plans to do whatever it was they were trying to do. Even today, though, I still worry about them coming back. Before I get into this next story, I want to talk about an important sponsor for today's video. Aura is an advanced online digital security service allowing you to scan and remove your personal data from various online sources, including scam centers, the dark web, and data brokers. These entities profit from your private information, making it crucial to eliminate your data from their reach, and Aura makes it as simple as possible for us to do this with their free trial. I was registered in minutes and had Aura scan and remove my data with just a few clicks. They notified me about dozens of places all across the internet where they found my personal data, like my full name, phone number, and address, and without Aura I never would have known. Afterwards, Aura continuously monitors my data, instantly notifying me of any issues that arise and enabling swift resolution. They also include a feature to encrypt your home's Wi-Fi, ensuring the security of all your connected devices. In today's world, personal identity and data theft are unfortunately widespread, affecting a significant number of U.S. citizens, with millions falling victim each year, resulting in huge financial losses. With Aura, you can have the utmost confidence in your security and prevention measures. For a completely free 14-day trial, visit aura.com, whispered, or scan the provided QR code. During this trial, you can discover if your personal data has been compromised, remove your data from multiple prominent platforms, and securely monitor your personal identity. I highly recommend using this free trial to see if your data has been stolen and to keep your identity secure. Thanks again to Aura for sponsoring this video and keeping our personal data secure. A year ago in midwinter, I was staying at an Airbnb on the east coast of the US. I had a family member that was sick, and I wanted to be nearby for a few weeks in case of any emergencies while staying there. I figured I might as well make a vacation of it, since I'd really be doing nothing else. So the Airbnb I got was a modern cabin with a small lake behind it. Most of the area around was a forest as well, so it was really nice in a very different landscape from where I lived. Anyway, about a week after I'd gotten there, I rented out some camping equipment and thought it'd be nice to go out by the lake and maybe spend a night on the beach. The Airbnb was only a short walk away if there was any trouble, so it wasn't really much of an adventure. I just wanted to lay out by the stars and clear my head. I guess I made a few walks out to bring all the equipment, then set up the tent. It was actually really easy because it was made for beginners, so I had plenty of time to get everything else set up, as well as a rock circle for the campfire. Once that was all done, I kicked back and relaxed, sipping on a beer as I watched the calm sound of the campfire, along with the forest, was something I'd missed, having lived in a big city for so many years. But maybe 20 or so minutes after the sun had set, I was caught off guard by a guy walking up to my campsite. I stood up as a natural reaction, but the man seemed to see my worriness as he stopped walking and put his hands up, apologizing for the scare. He was about the same age as me, mid-30s, but was very tall and skinny. I looked past at the forest he came from. There was no path that I could see. It was just a bunch of trees that backed up to the lake. Where did you come from? The man made a short grin as he said he was just staying in a place on the other side of the lake and saw my campfire, so he thought he'd come out and have a beer with I gave a nervous smile as that wasn't exactly a normal thing to do way out in the middle of a forest, and on second thought I was pretty sure there were no houses on the other side of the lake. I'm actually not looking for company right now, sorry, I said politely, hoping this could be a quick, harmless interaction. The guy seemed almost puzzled by my response as his grin went down to a straight face. He glanced at the Airbnb that was behind me and stayed quiet. Then, after a few moments of silence, he said okay and walked back the way he came. I watched, trying to keep track of him to see where exactly he was walking to, but he faded out into the darkness of the woods without any flashlight. Feeling pretty unnerved, I decided to grab most of my stuff and haul it back to the Airbnb, not wanting to risk being outside with that guy around trying to carry everything at once, though was a bad move on my part. Heart exhausting me after only getting halfway to the house, and just as soon as I stopped for a breather, I heard heavy footsteps coming from the woods. I turned, seeing the man storming straight out of the tree line and right toward me with a look of insanity in his eyes. I dropped everything and tried to run, but immediately got knocked to the ground from the speed he tackled me at. We both tumbled on the grass, and I somehow managed to get on my feet before he could get a hold of me again. The guy followed close behind, though even close enough to grab my shirt a few times in an effort to stop me. When I got to the house, I knew I'd have no time to unlock the door, so I had to go straight for my car. I pulled the keys out of my pocket as I ran up to it, getting inside and locking it. Just before he got to the door, I turned it on and put it in reverse as the man slammed his fist into the window, shattering it with just a couple punches. He reached in and grabbed my arm as I backed up, swinging the front of the car in his direction. It must have caught him by surprise because he didn't move fast enough to get out of the way. All I saw was his body slam onto the ground and not get up as I drove away. I called for help immediately while I drove, warning the police to get there quickly to get some answers out of him. But when they got there, the man was gone. All that was left were some shoe prints leading back into the woods. This happened only a few months ago. I work at a small retail store door in my hometown as an overnight employee. I do all the regular things like stocking shelves and taking inventory, and sometimes unloading late arrival trucks. The job is very chill, being that I'd usually work alone or with one other person, so nobody is there to boss me around all day. On this night, I was alone until 4 a.m. and I had a lot to do. Over the course of an hour, I was in the aisles the whole time, not needing to go to the back room for anything. But at around 11:30, I thought I heard something from the back. I walked down to the end of the aisle and looked around, then went into the warehouse room, and right as I entered, there was a knock on the back door. That door was only used for truck drivers when delivering a load, but I was never notified about any deliveries this night. Being a large metal door, though, there was no peephole or glass to look out of and see who it was. I walked over to the delivery bay and opened the garage just to crack, and just as I'd assumed, there was no truck. I was almost hoping there would be, though, because now I was really skeptical as to who was knocking on the back door in the middle of the night. A few minutes went by and no more knocks or sounds came from the door. I even pressed my ear against it and tried to listen, but I was pretty sure whoever had been out there was gone. Now being curious and slightly dumb, I opened the door to make sure nobody was still outside. I peered out into the unlit driveway running behind the building. There were no cars, no people, and not even any sounds. It was just empty and quiet. Seeing this and thinking back to the loud knocking, I felt a shiver go through me, and I closed the door. I walked back to the aisle I was in before and tried to get back to work without worrying too much. Through the next couple hours, I went in and out of the back room several times but never heard anything else. It was 2 a.m. by this point, and I was finishing up stocking one of the middle aisles when a very quiet but recognizable sound came from the back. It was the metal door clicking shut. My face went white as I froze up. I didn't hear anything else, but I knew I had to check on it. I walked very quietly, still listening, as I approached the back doors. At first glance, looking around the warehouse, I didn't see anything, so I made my way further in and toward the back door. It was closed, and being that it only opens from the inside, I was just confused, trying to think of what could have happened. I turned and looked down the hall of lined up boxes when I saw a figure facing me. He stood at the end of the hallway, seeming to have just rounded the corner and not expecting to see me. But after a short moment of shock, the man started sprinting at me. He was large and intimidating, with a look of anger in his eyes as he came barreling down the hallway. I ran for the door and into the grocery aisles, trying to make it to the front of the store. The man's footsteps coming up behind me were horrifying, but by the time I got to the front, the footsteps had stopped. I pulled my keys out and unlocked the door, and as I shoved the door open, I looked to my side and saw the man standing at the end of the aisle, just watching me. Without hesitation, I ran out into the parking lot and into my car, calling 911. By the time the cops arrived, the man was long gone, with no traces of where he went. Through the security footage, we could see the man wedging something into the back door that somehow unlocked it, allowing him to get inside. Once he was in, he looked around, as if trying to find something particular, before he saw me and chased me to the front. Why he let me leave and why he even broke in is still unknown. I don't know what would have happened had the man caught up to me or decided to not let me leave, but I'm just thankful and never had to come to that.